Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Pain Points, where the world meets business. And today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm sitting on this pod with my new guest co-host, Kevin. I always want to say Seif,
Safe, like life.
but it's Seif.
It's the German way. Yeah.
Safe. Yeah.
It's like
Come
it
and
goes
see
against
ya.
everything. Yeah, it goes against everything the English language tells you about, like I before E except after C and all those other weird ones. So
Yeah.
I get Seif a lot. I can just
Yeah.
go with it.
It's okay. I mean, I've been called Samson's not a common name, first name. So I've been called Jason quite a bit throughout my life. Jagoras, they try to throw a soft J, like I'm Hispanic. If you look at me, you know that's not true.
Jajoras?
Hagoras. But yeah, so today, you know, as we do every single week, we're talking about where the world meets business. We're talking about real-time news, what's happening across sports, entertainment, entrepreneurship, economics, technology, wealth, money, mindset, health, fitness. And we're actually going to cap it off if you guys stick to the very end. So what most people don't know about Kevin is he is a Navy SEAL, once a Navy SEAL, always a Navy SEAL. He runs a podcast called Smarter Not Harder, or excuse me, Harder Not Smarter. And he helps entrepreneurs and veterans make the transition into entrepreneurship, into business, into basically civilian life. And the very last thing we're going to talk about on the show today is about the mindset of Navy SEALs. There was a great post floating around Twitter. And so I'm so interested to hear Kevin's perspective versus some guy who's on Twitter trying to gain followers on mindset. But the very first thing I wanted to bring to the show, so I love college football, and I think there's a lot that you can learn about leading teams by way of college football. You're organizing young men towards a goal, and you have this whole new dynamic of the transfer portal and NIL money and whatnot being thrown at them. And I don't know if you saw Mike Norvell, but Mike Norvell, who is the head coach for Florida State, he decided that he was basically going to retrade part of his contract into a donation to help kind of establish FSU football as what they're calling the Vision of Excellence Initiative. So for those of you who don't know, FSU had a terrible season this year. I mean, they went 2-10. The only team that they beat that was semi-respectable would be Cal, and Cal's not even that great. And then like Charleston, South Carolina, or some school that like is not even on the map. And so Mike Norvell has been taking heat, but I think that, you know, it's par for the course, right? Like the industry has changed a bit. Like I think minor league sports, semi-professional, or excuse me, non-professional sports is kind of out the window. And I don't think they did a great job recruiting talent out of the transfer portal. So he's so committed to kind of reinvigorating it and basically taking his lumps that he gave back $4.5 million of his 2025 salary to the athletic.
How much
department.
was his salary? Like, is this, you know, one of those things where you see the CEOs saying, I'm only taking a dollar salary, but then they have, you know, huge stock buybacks and all they're doing is lowering their tax exposure. Like, is this a sizable amount? Like, is this 4.5 million out of his 500 or out of his $5 million dollar contract, or is this?
I mean, my guess was kind of close. He's probably making somewhere in the realm of 8 to 10. It says his contract for 25 was 9.9 million. So
okay.
So it's half. It's 50%.
I mean, it's a substantial amount, and you got to respect the guy for putting his money where his mouth is. He's reinvesting into the program instead of just taking the dollar amount and running with it. You know, it shows a lot about his character that he's trying to move forward and make this better, and he's acknowledged some of the things that he's done wrong, and trying to make it right.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good lesson in like entrepreneurship as a whole, right? It's like we're generally as CEOs or owners, you're reinvesting back into the business constantly and delaying gratification as long as possible. So to me, it's definitely a sign of his commitment to the long game and that he's not going anywhere, which I think is probably more important to the boosters than anything else, right? So I played at CU, and we had a few coaches that kind of came and went in between getting to Coach Dion that were definitely there for a stepping stone, right, to get their next gig. Most distinctly is the guy, I can't remember his name. He ended up going to Michigan State. anyways, he took like a $4 or $5 million contract at CU, and then the next year left to go take an $11 million contract at Michigan State after he told everybody like, "Oh, I'm not going anywhere, nothing." So, put your money where your mouth is. I think
Like
it's just
Biden,
kind of
I'm not gonna pardon anybody or my
accept.
son. But now I'm
Exactly.
gonna have to. Sorry, this is
Yeah,
too good of a deal not to.
yeah, 100%. So it's just the game of business. I think sports falls into that category. Is always changing, but just some good leadership lessons there on just don't just talk about it, be about it. I think you can get to the point when you achieve a level of success where you're not willing to make that sacrifice anymore. And I think for him, dude's a competitor, right? So he's like, I want to be hungry for it. And
Well,
if I
especially
had
for
to guess,
something like a football coach, where a player, even a professional player, what's the average lifespan of a NFL player? Like 4 years.
right?
Um, and so giving up half of your salary for a player would be very different because they have a very um, truncated time where they can actually be earning income.
Right.
Where a coach, he can be doing this for the next, I don't know how old he is, but he can probably keep going for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So he has a lot of longevity in this. Is yeah, give it the money. What do you need the extra 4.5 million for when your actual goal is to build a lasting program and build a legacy?
Yeah, 100%. And if he's smart, which I'm sure he is, there are some big bonuses hanging out there for having a winning season, winning a championship, going to a bowl game. You know what I mean? So all those things will come into play. So he's not an idiot. It's strategic.
Hmm.
Cool. Well, shifting gears off of that, I just wanted to open with something a little more lighthearted. But as you know, we love buying businesses. Kevin and I talk about buying businesses all the time on the show, or on the show. We talk about it on the show. Kevin's looking to buy another business. I buy businesses. I help people buy businesses. And one of the greatest mechanisms that we can use in order to buy a business would be the SBA. And there's some big changes that have come down the pipeline as of recent that I think are important for us to be paying attention to. More specifically, are in and around the topic of asset sales, and using the SBA and doing what's called a partial rollover. So, for a little bit of color, historically speaking, the SBA did not allow you to roll over equity from a previous owner or the seller of a business into an acquisition by way of an asset sale because they whatever their standard operating procedures were. I don't know entirely what the reasoning was behind it, but it made it really challenging because you were forced to do a stock sale, which is less favorable to the new business acquirer. And so they recently changed that. And this is actually a great post coming from Eric Pacifici. So for those of you who don't know, Eric Pacifici runs a group called S&B Law Group. Super intelligent, smart guy who's really just hung his hat on being an expert in this world that we play in, which is the lower part of the lower middle market and Main Street. And so he made this post that said, in the spring of 2023, the SBA updated its standard operating procedure to allow partial changes of ownership with seller retained equity, but only through direct stock sales in the operating company. This structure often proposed challenges due to potential liabilities and less favorable tax treatment. Effective December 6, 2024, the SBA has authorized updates permitting multi-step partial changes of ownership here. Buyers form a new entity or the new company. Sellers roll their retained equity into the new co. The transaction is executed as an asset acquisition. This aligns with the SBA financing with traditional M&A practices, allowing buyers to acquire assets while mitigating historical liabilities and achieving a step up in basis. So historically speaking, if I didn't want, anytime you buy a corporation or an S corp in this case, you're taking on and doing stock sale, you're taking on all the risk associated with that previous owner. So that's a new risk to the new buyer. You're also limiting your ability to step up the basis of all the new assets and everything that you paid for, unless, of course, you do something that's called a 338 election, which allows you to depreciate some of the goodwill that you paid this new owner. But certain things that creates certain challenges, which is an entity is not allowed to own an S corp, as an example, and so you have to own it personally versus maybe having like a holding company or a fund or something like that take equity. So in traditional M&A, you would migrate over to a new LLC and do exactly what they're talking about right here, but the SBA didn't allow that. So a lot of these changes are huge because they're going to make it super easy for us to transition over into a more traditional M&A practice, but it also sets the tone for what the SBA is going to be doing here in the next few years. Like some of the things they're also talking about is increasing the limit on an SBA to $10 million. And so I just wanted to bring that up. I think it's something important to talk about. Kev, I don't know if you have any commentary on that as much as I just wanted to like make it
I was
up
gonna say,
here.
what do you think the reasoning behind this? Because it sounds like it's getting away from the individual buying businesses to larger entities, like private equity or something else, now using the SBA to buy smaller businesses. Is that just to bring in more business to the well, not the not business really, because SBA isn't the business, but is it just trying to get more people borrowing money in a time where the interest rates are higher?
Yeah, I think anytime you put those weird limitations on it as it relates to like traditional M&A, you're going to limit the structures, the strategy, the potential buyers that would be interested in leveraging the SBA loan program to
Hmm.
buy that type of product. Number two, I think they're just also recognizing that there's a growing search fund community, right? Like so people that are currently owners or previously were owners or are maybe like graduates looking to buy a business and they're getting backed by investors like me who want to throw money at this and that I can't invest into an S corp directly by way of my fund, right? Because
Hmm.
of the S corp structure. An entity can't own that entity; it has to be owned by an individual, and so this allows it to happen and makes it a more common practice, right? If people aren't used to doing that, then they're going to have no idea how to really tackle that. So
So it just opens up the S corp election as an option, where before these larger investments were more restricted to C corp.
yeah, and just the dynamics of SBA makes it challenging. People just don't want to deal with the
Hmm.
brain damage, but it's necessary down at this lower part of the lower middle market as well. So I think it's just kind of in line with deregulation,
Hmm.
right? Of like, we're over regulating this stuff. We don't even do deals. We're making these rules and we don't even
So they're
know
just trying to figure
necessarily.
out how we can get more businesses transferred over, as they're reading the writing on the wall that a lot of these businesses are going to be up for sale, and need to have some kind of transfer.
Yeah, you got it. And when we're talking about small business being 70% of the economy and 46% of all jobs, it's like incredibly important.
Hmm.
So the next one I'm bringing up here is another update come from Jerry Friedman. He's also a great SBA lender, loan broker guy, super sharp, posts some great content on Twitter. But the SBA also rolled out a new procedural notice, which the numbers are relevant, but it's for 7A and 504 loans. And it appears that non-owner spouses no longer have to co-sign on the personal financial statement unless resources are co-owned with the borrowing owner spouse. So all that meant is, historically speaking, if I was going to get a 504 loan, my wife's not even involved in the business that's using the 504 loan to acquire real estate. I would have to go through just an extra hurdle of making my wife sign on the personal financial statement and effectively co-collateralizing the debt along with me, right? Now
Hmm.
they're effectively removing that, which is a good thing, right? Because the business is its own entity and it should be separated from me and my spouse personally. Now they tried to do that, I guess, to make it stickier, but again, right? Like small business thinking versus where kind of SBA is going, it's starting to become a little bit more dynamic, like a true, M&A.
I mean,
A
were
true,
people trying? Were they seeing people divorcing just to get one spouse separated the from the deal if it went south, or why would? I mean, if you're married, you're already kind of commingling your financials anyway. I don't understand why they would have made you sign, but made both of you sign in the first place. It seems just.
well, that's the point, right? Like if I was a sole proprietor, like sure that would make sense, right? But
Mhm.
technically, the whole reason why I structured my own business entity and run this business separate from me is to create a layer of protection between me and the business, right?
Mhm.
And so that was a way for them to kind of hook their claws into you if they needed to, because SBA debt is it's guaranteed, right? And so
Mhm.
they're trying to find a way to make the loan whole if they do end up selling that note on the secondary market, right? And they need to go collateralize it. But some of these things, again, I think they're just outdated for the market and the practice of where the market's at today. And
I could
then
see it.
and then the other one, number two, that they rolled out, which is interesting, is cash advances, like merchant cash advances, are now eligible for refinancing. And the SBA specifically says here these debts are presumed to not be made on reasonable terms. So that's super important when you're growing a business. Sometimes you might take on like a merchant cash advance, which is generally like stupid high interest rate, and you use it, you grow your business, but you're trying to like recap out of that and get into something that's a little more stabilized, like SBA debt. And
So is
historically
this
speaking, they wouldn't let you do
if you're
that.
trying to run a business, getting operational funds, pay yourself, pay your employees, get materials,
Equipment.
resources, any of that type of stuff. So you're just pulling out so you have some physical cash when you buy the business. It's not all just tied up in the debt.
Yeah, because you can also go get SBA loans to like, generally refinance the business as well, right?
Hmm.
So historically speaking, that hasn't been on the table at all. So um, those are, three big changes to the SBA that I think are becoming just important for us to recognize, but also just like telltale signs that the regulation is kind of moving out of the market, and it's going to be a little bit better and more fun to play in the SBA space.
I think it also goes to show that this is going to be a big playing field in the near future. I don't think buying businesses 20 years ago was that hot of a market. You had some private equity firms that were doing it, and people within the industry kind of knew about buying businesses. But
Yeah.
it's gotten significantly more media traction and um, attention recently, especially as commercial real estate's gotten much more difficult to actually have any kind of margin. People are seeing this
Yeah.
as the next option to actually invest. Everyone's putting money into rental properties and trying to buy commercial real estate.
Yep.
And I just don't think there's as good of a market for it. It got super saturated, and now this is going to be that new hot space that if you can get in early, it's going to be a huge advantage. And the SBA is kind of uh, prepping the environment for that to take effect, which is great to see. Usually you see the government acting reactively instead of proactively. So you're
Yeah.
actually having some smart people on the staff right now making decisions.
Yeah. I think the last number I saw was that the SBA segment was going to climb to about $650 billion a year, which um, is not that much, but it's a pretty decent amount of money compared to like some of these, large commercial real estate portfolios that are out there. But
Hmm.
that's in total, right? So it's a huge increase, and I think they're just preparing for that because, like you said, circa 2000, the path to exit the rat race was real estate,
Yep.
and that was the thing. Everybody's like, go build a rental portfolio. You can be a flipper, you can be a rental property owner, can maybe buy fourplexes, and then that kind of rolled
Everyone read
upstream into.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, and they're like, "This is what I need to do. All you need to do is
Yep,
go find the cheap houses and flip it." Right?
yep. But when everybody's competing for the same market share, like you said, the margins get thinner, the deals get less frequent. And so what's really separating people today is like those people that can get in and run a company are going to have a much greater competitive advantage over the next guy. And that's why, you're going to be banging the table for mid-career professionals to make that
Well,
pivot.
especially
Plus,
given how little skill it really takes to be a investment property
yeah,
investor or owner. If we all saw HGTV, those house flippers and stuff like that, we're like, these people are not smart. They're basically glorified realtors that got in on this little market, and they had a friend that's a general contractor.
right.
But it didn't really take a super qualified person to be able to take advantage of it. Running a business, though, you're gonna have to start seeing some intelligent, savvy people coming in to not only find the deals, but then also be able to run the business on the back end.
Yep, you nailed it. And that's a good testament to every asset has its day, right? And
Hmm.
I think I've been talking about this for quite a few weeks now. But this guy, Porter Stansberry, he's a guy that I love to follow. I'm a a part of his newsletter and all his communities. He's a former futures guy, really sharp. But he put this post out, about a week ago? No, not even a couple days ago. Said, according to the S&P, more than $2 trillion of commercial real estate mortgages will mature over the next 2 years, from 25 to 26. And the average interest rate on maturing loans underwritten in 20 and 21 is only 4.3%. So it's good luck refinancing at twice that rate today, and roughly 200 billion of these mortgages are on office properties where the underlying value has collapsed. Nobody's talking about this yet, but size of this pool of distressed capital is much larger than the subprime mortgage market at its peak in 2005 of 625 billion. The extend and pretend game that occurred in 2024 with the banks will only make these problems much worse in 2025 because nobody will know where the toxic waste is buried.
So you're gonna have to walk me through this one.
Yeah.
Describe what maturing loans is, because does that mean that the loan has run its course and they now own it, or is it they're gonna have to start paying the interest and stuff like that on these buildings that are now largely unoccupied?
Yes. Well, it could be some of both, but loans have terms and they have amortization schedules, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like a typical residential mortgage is going to be like a 30 and 30. So it's going to be a 30-year term with a 30-year amortization schedule, which is the payment schedule. But most commercial debt has, somewhere between, they call it a 5 to, it's not even less, 3 to 10-year term on like a 30-year amortization schedule, which means at the end of 10 years, there's a balloon, which means the loan has come to maturity and it's now time to either pay off the loan or refinance it, is what you would typically do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine if the market's going up, right? Things are getting more valuable because you would just refinance in to another, 3 to 10-year term, and the cycle would repeat itself, which is fine until all of a sudden the market goes inverse and now interest rates are higher and valuations of real estate are lower. When you try to get out of that, there's not enough equity to even refinance out the bad debt or the old debt, and the rate is worse. So you're effectively going to end up with a way larger payment than what you had previously, but you don't really have an option, right? Other than to refinance out of it. So what you'll probably see is a lot of these banks, because the banks are ultimately not in the business of owning real estate, they're in the business of lending money. They're going to have to work with a lot of these people, or they'll just foreclose, take the asset over, and then try to sell them. So it's 200 billion is a pretty massive number, especially when it's like office space that's not getting used. That's going to be really challenging for the bank to say, yeah, I'll take this back, knowing that there's really not a market, right? So I don't know. It's not like it's multifamily where there's cash flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit different, or storage where there's cash flow. But when it's just
Well,
an
I mean,
empty
office
building,
typically has cash flow because they have tenants, right? Like I know in the Bay Area, they built a ton of tech office space, and down here in San Diego, they built a just way over constructed lab space for all the biotech during COVID because they fell behind schedule with COVID, and then they finally were able to start going back to work and continue on with the construction. And so they just dumped a bunch of money into to build faster, but then the investment market within biotech fell out,
yeah,
and there's all this lab space, which at least with office space you can kind of repurpose to whatever. Lab space is super specific, where you have the clean rooms and the hoods and the sterilization and all these things that need to go into having a proper lab. It's tough to repurpose that without just burning a bunch of money and ripping it out. But yeah, up in the
that's
Bay
good.
Area with everybody going to work from home, and then maybe being told to go back to work, maybe not, depending on what the company is. They were left with a bunch of unused office space. I imagine a lot of this is that same stuff that they overconstructed and overvalued.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, laboratory for sure, really hard to change. But like, I'll give you an example. A company that I was a part of pre-COVID got into 120,000 square feet, plus had another 67,000 square feet. COVID happens, everybody goes work from home, and all of a sudden, nobody ever comes back to the office. It's like a hybrid environment, but like you can't just
Hmm.
rip that away from people. So they have now downsized from 120,000, got rid of the other 67,000 into 20,000 square feet, right? So, because the only type of people that could go in and move up into the 120,000 square feet is like a huge company like Hewlett Packard, right? So Hewlett Packard ended up coming and taking over that space because they are a legacy company with, tons of cash and incredibly liquid and tons of assets, right? So I just think that they way overbuilt it. The other thing I think they way overbuilt is a lot of this like warehouse space, like right up there with all the Amazon, manufacturing, or excuse me, Amazon distribution centers. I mean, up and down like the I-25 corridor in Colorado, they're freaking everywhere, and they're for lease, right?
Oh, the same way here in California, especially Southern California. You have a bunch on the 5, and then going out a little bit east in the less desirable land.
Yeah.
They're popping up these massive warehouses.
Yeah. Well, kind of segueing off on our economic topic onto the kind of the next one is I've been tracking 2 major numbers. It's the savings rate, and then it's also the Berkshire Hathaway Warren Buffett number, which is how much cash are they sitting on. So last week we talked about, the return on cash is now greater than the stock market. And the statistic I saw this morning was, I think Berkshire Hathaway has like 30% of their entire portfolio in cash at the moment, which is like record
Jesus.
high. Yeah.
That seems super high.
But this one comes from Bravis Research, who's been featured on the show quite a few times, and he says, "Caution: personal saving rates have fallen to quite low levels at a time when excessive savings have run out, and credit card debt is at record highs. This is a crisis in the making." And so the chart that is here, if you guys are watching this on the YouTube channels, is the personal savings rate at historic lows. So effectively, we saw all-time savings rates at like 2020, and then since then, it's pretty much eroded. And my guess on that is it has to do with the fact that things have just gotten incredibly expensive. People are not working as much, right? Cost of living has far exceeded the wage growth, and so you start to tap into your savings. You start to live on more credit cards, those types of things. And we're talking about 365 million people as like a whole, right? So some people haven't experienced that, but I don't know about you, but I sure as heck know that groceries are crazy expensive. Gas is finally coming back down to normal rate, but something to definitely.
Well, I mean, I know here in California, the housing market is insane. Like, there's no longer a affordable option for housing, and you can get into all the tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theories about where that actually is. Gavin Newsom's trying to claim that there's a housing crisis, when the reality is, as much as I love Airbnb, it created this huge ripple effect that's been going around because everyone's like, oh, this is a great way to stow away your cash into an investment that has great returns. And then I don't remember how long ago, but they changed a law that said you can buy a house now, a residential house, as a corporation instead of just an individual, which just opened the floodgate to groups like BlackRock, which I'd have to look it up to see how much of California real estate they actually own, but it's a substantial amount, and so it's created this false housing crisis where there's zero inventory, but there's also an all-time high of house vacancies, meaning the people don't live there full time. And so, like here in San Diego, we have, I want to say, San Diego County was an average of $1.8 million for a house. Encinitas, where I live, it was up even higher. And so to afford that house, you basically need to be making $250,000 a year. But you're also seeing a lot of these houses. That's the average. So what happens when you're at like $2.5, $3 million, which is not uncommon at all in this area? You need, like, the house around the corner from me is going for $4 million.
Jeez.
And you're east of the 5, so San Diego, Pacific Ocean, Highway 5 is like within a mile of the coast. You're east of the 5, so you're not even like the super desirable area with the waterfront property. The house is about 100 yards from a 4-lane road east of the 5, and they're asking $4 million for it. So to
Jeez.
afford that mortgage, you basically need to be making $500,000 a year uh, to, to get it. Like who even in the biotech market, the tech space, like it's very difficult to find people that are actually making that. Even in a dual income, both people are making $250,000 a year. That's a significant amount. And then California has property tax at
Yeah.
1.1, I think. So you're looking at $44,000 a year just in property taxes. That's only going to go up. You're never going to get rid of that. So you're basically buying a new Tesla, Model Y or something like that every year and just giving it away. And so I think that's where a lot of the savings is going. Is people bought these exorbitant houses, have huge property taxes, maintenance taxes or maintenance fees, upkeep. They bought the expensive cars, and it's slowly
Wow.
dwindling away.
Lots of toys were bought from between 2020 and 2022 for sure. I looked up the number here. I was trying to see how much BlackRock owns, but they gave me just a general sentiment. In California, 35.2% of homes are owned by investors.
Oh my god!
And it's
But yeah,
that's
we have a housing
38
crisis.
mil-
35%. So over a third
Yep.
of the houses in California are owned by investors of some
Yeah.
capacity.
With
Probably
38
30%
million
of that.
people.
Yeah. And so that, and then of course with that, Newsom has declared the housing shortage, which has then opened up uh, these legal channels. So and Encinitas again, because it's what I know. There's all kinds of construction because this used to be nurseries and just open land. We're
Right.
the wildflower capital of America for a long time. And we were basically a drive-through city. At Oceanside, you go to San Diego. Really wasn't a whole lot in between. And now it's one of the most desirable spots in the country to be. And so the housing development market here shot through the roof, and everyone's like, we really don't want that. But because Newsom has declared the state of emergency,
Right.
if the developers offer 10% of very low income or 20% of low income housing, which that's low income of that zip code. So low
Right.
income in Encinitas is probably like $120,000 for a
Right.
family of four. Um, and so if they do that, then they can circumvent the uh, coastal environmental inspections. And so they're
Wow.
doing all kinds of wazoo things. It's a money grab, as I
Yeah.
said, tinfoil hat stuff, but it's definitely there.
Oh, I think you're spot on. I was going to say the other statistic I looked up when you were talking about it was just the median household income in the United States. It's 80,000.
For the
I
United
saw
States.
that's
Yeah.
the entire United States. So I'm sure, I mean, to live in California, it's probably higher, but then again, maybe not. I
Well, I
mean,
know San Francisco a couple of years ago because my sister lives there. She sent me an article. If you are a single person living in San Francisco earning less than 90,000 or $100,000 a year, you're below the poverty line.
wow. Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. So all that to say, like as a business owner, you need to be thinking about these things because that's your future customer that is faced with this burden. And so it can dictate on which markets you expand into, whether or not you decide to increase prices, obviously what your employees are going through, and they're experiencing the same cost of living burden, right?
Mm-hmm.
As your employees might be. So all those things need to be thought about, which is why we bring it to the show. But the next thing I think we need to be thinking about is just what's changing. So we've been talking a lot about AI, right? Obviously, that's like kind of the big move. And then you see kind of this talks about generative AI and kind of what's next. But did you see the news about Google's super chip that they just created called
No,
Willow? Oh
no.
my,
What do you got?
oh my gosh. Let me pull this up real quick. So we'll take a couple minutes to try to read through this, but so this comes from Kevin Joey Chen, goes by at Kev X Alchemy on X. He says, while everyone watches AI, Google broke time itself. Their quantum chip just solved a problem that would have outlasted the universe in 5 minutes. And this is just the start. What you need to know about Willow and how it will transform humanity in 2030 and beyond. So here's the story. Google tested Willow to see how powerful it was. The task, a problem called the random circuit sampling RCS benchmark. It would take the world's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion years to solve this problem. That number is crazy, by the way. Number of years of our universe that our universe has existed are 13.8 trillion. What 10 septillion looks like is this. I can't even fathom that. It's
It's like
1,
an extra
2,
10
3, 4,
zeros.
5, 6, 7, 8. It's 24 zeros, 29, 25 zeros. So Google Willow solved the RCS benchmark in 5 minutes. So let's talk about supercomputer chips for a second. Chips in your laptop or desktop use bits for computations. A bit holds a limited amount of information. Why? Because it can be in only one of two states at a time, 0 or 1. Meanwhile, chips in quantum computers use quantum bits or qubits. These can exist in multiple states at a time. Qubits used together exponentially increase computational power. P.S. If you want more, these shameless plugins. What makes Willow special is it handles qubits. Qubits are powerful but incredibly fragile. The more you increase them, the more likely they are to produce errors in computations. This was a massive roadblock quantum computing has faced for 30 years. But with Willow, adding more qubits actually reduced errors instead of creating them. The secret, organizing qubits into grid configurations called logical qubits. This leads to real-time error correction. Operating below threshold, as theoretical computer scientist Peter Shor said in 1995. It is a history-making accomplishment and absolutely critical for building scalable quantum computers. Why is this important to us normal folk? Because quantum computers will create innovations exponentially faster than regular computers. A few possibilities. Quantum machine learning for AI, optimizing traffic flow in smart cities. And there's a video. Vastly improved airline schedules, more efficient electrical vehicle batteries, accelerated drug discovery for complex diseases, quantum cryptography for super secure communications. In short, quantum computing will have incredible impact on our lives. Don't expect to have a quantum laptop anytime, though. Willow is a huge leap forward, but we're still light years away from practical applications. The computer picture they're showing here looks like the original IBM computers that they used to have. But
those massive mainframes.
Yeah, all that to say that, like, the world is accelerating all around us. And if we're not prepared to move at light speed for our business, there's a good chance that we're probably going to get left behind. So if you're not even, like, we talk about how this is going to be exponential, but if you're not even adopting AI and machine learning and we'll call them AI agents and even marketing automation and things like that, like, it's coming for your business. And it's going after all the white collar work first, and it'll be followed by them trying to figure out how to come after the blue collars in the trades as well.
Well, really, I mean, with AI, it's one of those things that even if you're not really in a position to be using it, you should be messing around with it. Like ChatGPT, it's free, and honestly, the $20 a month to get the paid membership is worth it. I use it all the time across a whole bunch of things. It's a great way to remove the busy work out of menial tasks that require creative input, but then elongated, busy work to put it all together. Writing a paper, for example. Like, yes, you can go on and say, write me a paper about the discovery of America, and it'll pull out some bullshit that it'll sound like AI wrote it. But if you actually take the time to say, this is how I want the paper to be structured. This is how many words I want it to be. This is my style. This is my tone. This is going to be the audience. And then these are the big key facts I want you to put in there. Like, this is when it was discovered. This is how the interaction they had with the Native Americans, all these things. You really refine it down instead of sitting there taking all these ideas. And yes, I mean, you can argue both ways about the importance of being able to be a good writer, but if you can put all these inputs in and have it push out a paper that hits all those things, that has the right tone, and then you go through and edit it and you tell it to make these changes, you make it into an iterative process, you can do huge amounts of work. And, like, yes, you can talk into the importance of schoolwork, but if you're in a business and you need to write 1,000 emails to vendors or customers or whatever, now you can actually have them all customized to like, you can put in, hey, this customer it likes these things and they want to, and they receive criticism or input this way better. So now you can style it to that person's method of receiving information. So you can put the same email and say, this person doesn't like, aggressive verbiage, and they need things to be
Yeah.
much
You need
softer,
to be
and
soft
boom.
and not
Yeah.
don't be as direct.
And so now you can have it switch the message that you originally wrote, which is in your style, to match that person's reception style, and you're just going to go across so much easier. And now you're able to do this over and over and over again. And then you can even automate all of that and say, here's my list of all my people, and here's their personality types, and I want you to match all these things. Now you're just that much more effective as a salesperson or a business owner, and all those things.
You hit the
And
nail on the head. It's just like an expansive part of our brain, because being a good writer and being extremely knowledgeable on a topic are not necessarily congruent, right?
Mhm.
There's the guy who wrote the book Who Not How. His name escapes me at the moment. Anyways,
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember.
yeah, he's not the best writer, but he got approached by a great writer who said, "Oh, Dan Hardy." Dan Hardy approached him and said, "Hey, I want to write your book for you." And he said, "Perfect. You're the who to my how," right? And so, historically speaking, like if you wanted to write a business plan, it would eat up hours of your day, right? And now, like what I can do is I just take all the thoughts and collect them into groupings or bullets, and then I leverage AI to help me expand the research or expand the depth of this and then tune it up. You still need the knowledge to be able to edit it or correct it or know where it's making mistakes. Like there's no escaping that. You can't be blind to it. But it has leveled the playing field for sure, because I would say
For
that I'm
entrepreneurs, it's massive because now you have all
yeah,
the you have a graphic designer and a web designer, and a executive assistant and an operations
exactly.
specialist and a finance specialist, all for $20 a month. And you don't even have to pay the $20, but it just gives you a little bit more priority, I think, in getting your prompts answered.
Well, and just yeah, and then you're going to see more and more apps just built on top of those engines, right? And then that
Hmm.
becomes the competitive advantage. I got hit with an ad the other day that was trying to sell me. They basically packaged AI agents into different things. Like, hey, this is your email automator. This one is your business development AI, and they gave them little faces and personas, like little caricatures.
Little
And then
avatars.
you would pay a subscription per month, and then you would get these different little avatars to help you do different things. Now, I didn't try it, but that's where it's going, right? They're trying to package up something that for most people things seems intangible or ethereal, and to put it into little useful avatars. That's how you should be thinking about it. But this is a good segue into the next topic, in around quantum computing, and why doing what we're doing right here, creating podcasts and having real authentic opinions and conversations, is so valuable. And this post came from Isaac, goes by at the Isaac Med, maybe. He said, "I really think that 2025 is the year that influencer marketing as we know it actually dies. Social commerce has turned everyone into an affiliate. Consumer trust is low. Looking at you, TikTok, we are entering the nothing is real era." And so if you're entering a nothing is real era, then actually showing up as real, authentic, not perfectly polished is actually a real competitive advantage, just like we're doing right here. You're sitting in your home studio. I'm sitting in my home studio. We're not perfect. We're not the most intelligent dudes out here, but
Well, you and I talked
um,
about this a while back because we both had newsletters, and I think you kind of reinvigorated yours. But we around the same time we both stopped with the email newsletters because with ChatGPT going to what I was talking about, anybody can jump on and say, "All right, here's the general theme of what I'm doing," and it was just frivolous stuff getting thrown out there. Like, here's 9 life hacks to improve your functionality. It's like, who's this person that's sending this stuff out that they are reliable, credible people? And a lot of times they're curators anyway. They're like, "All right, here's 9 habits of the top CEOs." It's like, well, do I really want to be like a top CEO anyway? And are their habits really that beneficial? And so it's just a bunch of garbage getting pushed out there. And I think a lot of people signed up for newsletters because they were good, but then their inbox was getting flooded with them. And you start getting to the point where like, I'll read that one later. You just delete it, and then your open rate goes down, and you're spending, if you actually were doing a good newsletter, I know yours was talking about all kinds of business related things that takes time to compile and put your thought into and get the details on. Yeah, you're dropping 2-3 hours a week into a
yeah.
newsletter that may or may not be getting the same traction, where a podcast is actually you showing up until Willow gets going and you can use Grok or whatever to completely create a fictionalized podcast. Type in or you can even say, make me a script for a podcast, and then generate the avatars and send it off. Until that happens, having actual people having actual conversations about topics that they are knowledgeable about and can provide valid opinions and useful information. I think podcasts are that's why so many people are gravitating to that versus so many other forms of information gathering.
Yeah, I think if you just look at where is technology evolving to make it easier for people to do things, and you just don't do that. Example,
Mhm.
Beehive, which was the platform that we were building our newsletter on. I mean, they're incredible. They built an incredible product, but now it's easy for any Joe Blow to create a newsletter, where it used to be hard. If you look at Sam Parr, who started The Hustle, dude, he built a newsletter when building a newsletter was hard, very,
Mhm.
very hard to do. And so I think the greater the barrier to entry, the more that you should be leaning into that method of content creation. Because even like the whole write a book scam, right? Like, oh, let me author a book, and everybody thinks they're just going to author a book, and all of a sudden they're going to be famous. It's like, oh, you need a book to help you sell stuff. It's like, no, I need to actually have real opinion, real thought, be have my own platform. That's actually what's most important. It's not about having a book. It's not about having a newsletter. It's about creating meaningful value and adding it to the market. And so, yeah, I think podcast, video, YouTube, even some shorts on TikTok, like those could be incredibly valuable channels that we
Mhm.
should be leveraging. One of the things I noticed about TikTok as of late is the algorithm has shifted to really hyper local. And so it's if
Really?
you have a if you have a local business, holy cow, man, you're going to get some incredible reach and tap a whole new audience that's not living on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter or
What do you think is
Facebook.
going to happen with that? Because I know with the forced sale of TikTok, they said that ByteDance said that they're not going to sell the algorithm with it. Do you think they're just going to bring in a team of whoever to
I
redesign
don't
the
know.
algorithm to be similar to YouTube or Instagram or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know, but the hyper localization of that search, I think, is just really, and I use the word search because that's how people are using those channels now.
Mhm.
I think social in general is just going that way. So the age of like needing to have a bunch of subs in order to get reach is is being replaced with creating quality content in a market where people who have a bunch of subs have stopped providing real value, right? And they've kind of taken the easy way out. So never has there been a better opportunity than there's today. So
Agreed.
so pivoting off of that, I kind of bumped this up in the show. I was going to do it later, but I wanted to bring up these. This is another thread, and it was 5 predictions from Gary V specifically talking about marketing. And so Yasmin, I can't even say that last name. How do you say that last name?
Khosrow Shahi. Shahi? Shahi.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
So
go with
here's her.
that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yasmin.
Yeah. Well, sorry,
Not
we
my
foobarred
not
your
my
name.
Bollywood.
Yeah. In 2006, a man bet his life savings on platforms nobody believed in. Twitter, a waste of time. Facebook for college kids. Uber, a joke. That man is Gary V, and those bets turned him into a multimillionaire. Here's his 5 latest predictions that could do the same for you. So, number 1, social media is dead. We're entering the era of interest-based media. It doesn't matter if you have 10 followers or 10,000. Every piece of content will be judged on based on its quality. So, literally what we just talked about, which means a guy with 100K TikTok followers can't get 10K views on his crappy videos, but a guy with 100 followers can get 100K views on his great videos. The reason the algorithm is not going to give the upper hand to big creators, it's going to give the upper hand to great creations. Number 2, live shopping. I don't know if you've seen this, but coming up from our age, I know you know what QVC is.
Mhm.
And the home shopping network, well, that's coming to at least to TikTok. There's the live shopping. And so the old era, people shop from content shared by influencers and brands. The new era, people buy things during live events hosted by influencers or brands on social media. Again, like I'm connecting with a real person during a live event. And people are making like millions in an hour.
Oh,
Which
I
is
mean,
crazy.
the reach is huge. I mean, before, think about the infomercial stuff. There are some hilarious infomercials that will go down in history. Uh, the the shake weight, probably the best one ever. We had a guy going through buds. He had to carry a shake weight around because he threw the grenade like a Sally, and so like we have to work out your arm muscles. He basically limp wristed the grenade throw. And so they're like, "You're dangerous to the team." So they put uh, a rifle strap on the shake weight. He had to carry that thing around with him all of third phase. But yeah, there's only so many people that are watching TV at that programmed time, and you need to have cable, and you need to be home to have the TV on. Now with the internet, people can be literally at their office with their phone open or even on the browser watching this stuff going on. I mean, it's probably terrible for workplace efficiency, but literally anywhere, anytime, people can be watching these streaming things, and it's now also not restricted by uh, the FCC or even national boundaries. You can be in Europe broadcasting to people in Asia and the US. And so your reach is massive.
Yeah, 100%. The third thing that Gary Vee says is organic content is going to be greater than paid ads, which he's always kind of said that, but paid ads has been a hack if you're really good at content to be able to scale quickly, and maybe drive like direct to conversion. But what he's saying, because you can effectively test a really quality piece of content, get the reach, you'll now get this instantaneous feedback. You then take that and turn it into a paid ad. So I mean, there's some truth to what he's saying here. I have my only caveat to that is you can use paid ads to test more quickly because you can get exponential reach.
Mm-hmm.
But his point is, if you win at the algorithm, then you'll know without a shadow of a doubt, without spending any money, that you can win on.
Guys like Justin Welsh nailed it on LinkedIn. He built a entirely organic following. He claims without spending a single dollar on paid ads, which I wouldn't put past him because I've seen him grow over the last 3 years, and he's been growing for longer than that, 5 or 6 years. He started with 3,000 people and now has 600 something thousand, but he's hyper focused on one thing, and that's growing your LinkedIn network and being able to monetize it and to being a solopreneur. And so everybody that follows him, he has a, I don't remember, it's like a 5-hour course that he filmed via Loom and used Excel and like PowerPoint. Is the most basic thing ever, but he's very intelligent and specific in how he goes about talking about how he grew his following, and makes it a very repeatable thing for other people to do. And so he turned this thing into, it probably took him, let's even go on the high end, like 50 hours to make, 10 hours of recording and then 40 hours of kind of production. He used Gumroad at the time to break it down into pieces. And he's on the path to make $10 million out of that one course that sells for 120 bucks.
Yeah, wow.
Inside 5 years. And that's all organic marketing, because everybody knows on LinkedIn that this is what he's known for and this is what he does, and that's all he focuses on. And so, yeah, you're going to be able to make a huge amount of money, but that's taken 5 years of posting on LinkedIn every single day and promoting this stuff and being entirely focused on that one thing. So if you have the time and the ability to do that, 100% organic marketing can be the way. But if you don't have the time, then you're going to have to do paid ads. Sorry, Gary
Vee. But yeah, I mean, my only response to that is, like, as a founder or a leader or an owner, it's becoming more important to just prioritize that. It feels like a non-money making activity when you're doing it, but I think what you just pointed out is substance matters much more than like visually appealing content, right? The video is not crappy because of the quality. It's crappy because of the content, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that matters. Obviously that can vary from, platform to platform and industry to industry. But the next prediction he has is AI influencers. So influencer marketing is a $17 billion industry, but with AI, one person can now do the work of 5 influencers. A real influencer earns 1x income, but if they create 5 AI influencers, they can scale to 5x their current earnings. So I don't know if that takes away from like being an original influencer and just creating like a total fake profile, but I could see like a guy like you, Kev, because you're you're such a big influencer, being able to
Huge.
huge, but being able to like train it, and it's literally taking your thoughts and ideas and creating content exponentially faster using your likeness, your voice, than you could be able to record on your own,
Or I mean, you create one piece of content and have AI break it down. So this thing is more optimized for LinkedIn. This one's optimized for TikTok. This one's optimized for Instagram. And so you're not trying to build 5 things separately. You're able to take one piece of content and extrapolate it over a broader thing. It's kind of like we talked about earlier, using AI to write these letters to different people who have different personalities and they want to receive information differently. Instead of taking the time to write 5 different emails to 5 different people, say, all right, here's my baseline, break it down into what would be trending on those platforms.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to think about it. And number 5, which is something you and I advocate for a lot, it's actually a big part of why we connect, is just the importance of building a personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if you're going to be an entrepreneur in 2025 and beyond, and you're not thinking about personal branding, then you're going to struggle, because people don't necessarily just buy the brand, they buy the person who runs the brand. And he's been talking about that since 2008, but he's now, I guess you would say, quadrupling down on that very topic.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really more to say than that. Build a brand. It's important.
Yeah. Okay, so we're butting up on time. I had one on here that was talking about the healthiest, fittest grandpa on the planet, which I think is important, but we'll save it for another time, because I want to get to this last post, which is really the kind of the cherry on top, or the nugget for the show. And it's in around mindset. So I think that I've been speaking a lot to my teams and speaking a lot to different teams that have asked me to come in and talk to them. And mindset has been kind of the top of the ecosystem, because I think 2 things. If you had an okay year, your mindset's probably okay. There's a chance that we could get kicked in the teeth in 25 and 26. So you need to make sure your mind's sharp and ready for that. But number 2, not everybody had a great 24. I think for a lot of businesses, it was really challenging. For a lot of employees, it was really challenging. And so keeping a sharp mindset matters. I don't think anybody is better at keeping your frame of mind tight and preparing for that than the SEALs are. And especially in the fog of war, right? The greatest quote I ever heard was, you default to your lowest level of training in the fog of war. You don't default to your highest level of training. So I wanted to
I think it was a Greek or a Roman guy. Is like, you'll never rise to your level of expectation. You'll always fall to your level of training.
There you go. Exactly right.
Love
so I want to read this post from Teddy
Seelys. So I will say, Teddy's awesome. He was on our podcast, Harder Not Smarter. I don't remember what episode number, but we'll put it in the show notes. Former D1 baseball player. He talks a lot about that transition of sports to professional life, and it's very similar to the transition of special operations back to civilian side. You have this very hyper focused mission in life, and now you're like, what do I do after? But I always like to poke fun at people that bring up, do this like a Navy SEAL. So let's dive into it. I haven't read this yet.
All right, cool. So Navy SEALs are the most elite warriors on earth. Do you agree with that, Kev?
For the most part, yeah, sure.
Green Beret is pretty badass too.
How do they kind of mix around? Like it depends what the mission is. Yeah, if we're getting into the water, we're the best. Like this picture here from the 90s. We don't use MP5s anymore, so that's classic stock photo.
Dude, you've called me out on some of the webinars that we've done together too. So you're like, don't ever use that photo ever again.
Like it's a caption or a clickbaity photo. The guy doesn't even have a name tape on his uniform.
Yeah, there you go. See things we would never know. So says Navy SEALs are the most elite warriors on earth. How do they become that way? By developing an unbreakable mindset. Here's how they do it and how you can do it too. Last year, I spent 3 days in the wilderness training with a Navy SEAL. We spent a lot of time on mindset, what it is, why it matters, how to apply it. Here's what I learned. What is mindset? In simple terms, mindset is how you view and process the world around you. It influences how we think, feel, and act in any situation. Our mindset is impacting us for better or worse every moment of every day, whether we realize it or not. The SEALs teach 3 pillars of mindset: patient, present, deliberate. Is that accurate?
I'd say so, but I will also say the SEALs don't really teach it so much as they screen for it. We
Mm,
did some during Buds. We did some classroom things where there was a retired master chief who'd come in and talk about, hey, when you're going on a conditioning run, you should go into it thinking that this is going to be the longest run of your life, so that when 3 to 5 miles later it's done, it's easier than what you expected.
yeah.
And so they try and teach you these type of tactics. I will say, from my personal perspective, I would go into every run being like, oh, we're only going to run to like the demo pits, which is like a mile down the beach. And then we'd run past it and it's like, ah, fuck. It was just like constant letdown. We're going to turn around at State Beach. We didn't turn around there. It's like constant letdown, constant letdown. Whether that made me a harder person or a dumber person, hence the name Harder Not Smarter of the podcast, is something to be said. There are benefits to going into things, expecting it to be much worse and having it be easier. There's also the benefit of being able to just have a resilient mind that you can deal with these constant letdowns that are invariably going to happen. Life's going to throw you curveballs. You think you go into it with a plan, and the universe is just going to laugh at you. So it's good to be able to say, this thing is out of my control. Going back to Stoicism, the Daily Stoic, Ryan Holiday or whatever his name is, talks about it a lot. Understanding what's in your control and what's out of your control is vital to having a resilient, unbreakable mind. Because if you're constantly being victimized, or in that victimhood mindset of this is happening to me, as opposed to I'm doing this and I'm learning from it, that's really what the difference maker is. So
That's
short of
that's
story is, I don't know if the SEALs teach it or screen for it. There's a little A, little B.
yeah, that's a good word though. I think if you're new to entrepreneurship, like it's it's important to prepare for it to be much harder and much longer than you anticipated.
Hmm.
As you get into it, there's levels to this, and with each successive level, you're going to come into contact with things that are more difficult than you know how to deal with, right? And you just have to be resilient, like you said, to like work through that to be able to come out the other side. And when you come out the other side and you look back, you're like, man, I learned a ton. Here's how I would do that differently next time. But as you keep going and growing, man, it's harder and harder and harder. And so, on the topic of be patient, right? The first pillar, be patient, is the first pillar of the mindset. We must be patient in 3 ways: with ourselves, with our teammates, and with the process. So, what does that mean? Be patient with ourselves. We're going to make mistakes. It's a part of the process of growth. When we do, be patient will help us overcome it, learn from it, and continue on. Being patient with our teammates, right? Our teammates are humans as well. They will also make mistakes. Getting frustrated with a teammate doesn't help you or them. If you want to be a great teammate, start by being patient. Be patient with the process. Everything is a process. We can't achieve a goal on the first step. We can't master a new skill on day one of practicing it. Be patient with the process helps us be consistent, and relentless consistency wins over time. How to apply patience? We can apply patience every day in countless ways. Start with yourself, what you're working towards. Give yourself permission to be patient. This is some like redundant AI BS here, I heard a post from Jocko, and Jocko was like, like sometimes when we're losing our patience or our frustrations, that fear kicks in, right? And then we get angry. And he's like,
Hmm.
dude, if you're getting angry, you're losing control. And if you're losing control, then you're not seeing the world clearly, right? It's definitely affecting your mindset.
Yeah, and one of the big quotes of the teams is "calm breeds calm." Um, before
Mm,
you, we use radios constantly to talk with one another. They harp on this constantly that um, it if you key up and start talking in an excited state, yelling, talking too quickly, acting panicked, it's going to spread.
Mm.
But if you're calm, if you slow down, take a deep breath, think about what you're going to say it, turn off, take a breath again. Everyone's blood is up in a firefight. You need to bring everyone back down so that people can think clearly. So he's absolutely accurate. If you start losing patience and you become more emotional people don't make logical choices, and illogical decisions get people killed.
Mm.
Or lose businesses and other things like that. It's
Yeah,
less drastic, but the results are the same. Stress is stress. People talk about that when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I haven't done anything like being a SEAL," but they've run businesses or they've done these challenging things. It's important to remember that your body doesn't care if you're going through a merger and acquisition or you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. You,
yeah,
you have the adrenaline jump, you have the hyper focused pupils, you have cortisol's going up, and all these physiological things that happen. And that's honestly the problem with society today, is that we've created um, these fake stressors, these self-imposed stresses that constantly spike these things. And so that's where most people's detriment is they've become victims to their own man-made stress. And
yeah.
so being able to go into things with the mindset of, I need to calm myself down and then make a decision, it goes so much farther than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, which is good for number 2, which is be present. So I know for myself personally, I'm constantly living in the future, and that has a tendency to make me very anxious. It's important to obviously have like a clear vision and a goal for where you want to go and what you want to do, but sometimes we're living in the future of like maybe how a problem might play out in a negative way, and that can make us anxious. Obviously,
Mhm.
then they say if you're living in the past, that'll make you feel depressed. So a deal doesn't go the way that you want it, it falls apart, and then you get stuck there. So I would definitely say being present is the second pillar of a great mindset, which is you can only control what's right here, right in front of you.
Yep.
So he says SEAL training is notoriously difficult, but SEALs often say the same thing. There's no single element that's extraordinarily difficult. Almost everyone can complete each one. It's the totality of it that breaks people. So, like you said, living in the future, right? I think it's something you're really good at is living in the present, right? You're running down a couple miles and you keep running. You're like, oh, shit, it is what it is. I guess we're going to keep running.
Yep.
I'm not anticipating it being done. I'm not regretting that it was in the past. I'm just back in the present and back on the grind.
Yeah, the past and the future are just stories you tell yourself. One hasn't happened and one already did happen. But you're literally just living in a story that you're telling your mind. It's not what's currently happening.
Awesome. And then we're going to kind of jump forward just to wrap it up. But number 3, be deliberate. Be deliberate is the third pillar of mindset. Being deliberate means exercising self-control. We must be deliberate in 2 ways, with our action and with our speech. With your action, for SEALs, this is obvious. Every physical action can mean life or death in combat. Thankfully, for most of us, that's not the case, but our actions still matter. They keep us safe, healthy, and productive. Be deliberate with your speech. The spoken word is powerful. Most SEALs waste few words. They're extremely intentional in what they say, which is what you just alluded to.
Mm-hmm.
This has been trained into them for years and years and years. So with all that, like, would you say that this is accurate? And is there any other nuance to that like maybe you want to impart on everybody who's listening today, Kev?
Yeah, I mean that's largely accurate. I don't think you need to be a Navy SEAL to live by any of those. It just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, here's things that successful CEOs do. Here's things that Navy SEALs do. Here's things that professional athletes do. Um, there's going to be a ton of overlap. We just going back to branding. The SEALs have created a hell of a brand for themselves that
Yeah.
people associate immediately with certain amounts of credibility in different areas. So you don't need to actually go through buds and do surf torture and run miles under a boat to learn these things. Honestly, studying stoicism is a huge one. I think more people should should look um, into stoicism, and how living a stoic life it's, it'll pay dividends so much in how you react to things. Like the amount of road rage and flight rage have just skyrocketed over the years, and that's not because people are it's not because flying has become more stressful or driving has become more stressful. It's pretty much the same. People are just more stressed in their day-to-day life because of things that have going on. We talked about earlier that people's savings have gone way down. Their buying power has gone way down. The job security has gone down. Their prospects of being able to buy a house have gone down. And so all these things are just being piled onto it. And because you're not being present, you're thinking about the past of how this thing happened, or you're thinking about the future that might happen. People are just amped up constantly. And so it's just people are lashing out at everyone else around them.
Yeah, I've seen those posts of like, it was easier for you when you were growing up. It's like that's just such a terrible mindset. But I've always practiced stoicism like unintentionally. I think it comes from my dad because he would always say, "Hey, before you go out tonight, I want you to walk through this scenario, right? Guy comes up to you and he makes a comment about your girlfriend. How are you going to respond? Right? And here's the repercussions of if you respond X or Y, what could end up happening to you in the rest of your life."
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you kind of go to those scenarios or those situations. Like that's what a good SEAL does, or what you do before a mission is you're just playing out like every single possible scenario that you think could happen and what you might do so that you have like some level of I've been here before and I can respond to this accordingly versus just some random situation that you haven't thought of, which is still possible, but you're trying to minimize those as much as
100%.
possible, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to confidence and perspective. That's really what Buds gives you, and being a SEAL gives you. You have confidence in your capabilities. You've accomplished these things, so I can also accomplish these other things, which are either similar, easier, maybe harder, but in on par with that challenge. And perspective. It's no one's dying. I'm not freezing my ass off. Right now, I'm warm. I'm dry. I'm not sandy. I'm not hungry. I'm not tired. I can work through this problem. It could be a lot worse.
Yeah, that's a good word. Well, we'll end on that, man. How can people go check out the Harder Not Smarter podcast? Where the best place to listen to it, and yeah, how can they follow you?
My biggest spot for social media is going to be LinkedIn, but we also have a YouTube channel for Harder Not Smarter. We have an Instagram, Harder Not Smarter podcast, I believe, and then we're on the major streaming platforms. So we got Apple, Spotify, YouTube. I think we're on Amazon and all the other ones too. It gets broadcast across them. So whatever your favorite streaming platform is, I'm sure we're on there. And it's Harder, Not Smarter, not the other way around. I won't even say it to confuse you.
Well, if you guys like what you heard, we appreciate you for listening in every single week. We're trying to break down business news and give you guys a little bit of insight and wisdom so you can quickly go back to your day and keep crushing it. So if you liked it, share it with a friend, give us a comment, give us a sub, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Thanks a lot.